Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is the Sunday, 2nd of May show, number 135. I notice I've managed to put the wrong date up on the Facebook post. I'll amend that later. What have we got for you today? Well, we'll be looking at a government statement which opens the door for self-driving vehicles on UK roads. Elon Musk is disputing the police report that there was no one sat in the driver's seat of a Tesla that crashed fatally in the US a couple of weeks ago. Smart motorways may have seen twice as many fatal accidents as claimed, say Labour. Ox brings custom chic to electric bikes. Dunlop's Mutant offers a crossover tyre for modern bikes. And we'll finish up with a better biking tip about identifying one-way streets and some tips on how to use them. So that's all in today's show. Don't forget, if you've got any comments, any questions, any feedback on the show generally, anything you'd like to ask, maybe for inclusion in a future show, do drop me a line and I will get back to you at the end of the show. I'll usually say hello while we're on the way through as well these days, but do feel free to drop me a line anytime. So yes, who have we got this morning? Martin has looked in from Vietnam. Good morning. And Paul is also here. Good to see you again, Paul. Right, okay, so what's going on today then? Well, the Department for Transport Centre for Connected and Autonomous Vehicles has this week released a statement which could see the first self-driving vehicles allowed on UK roads as soon as the end of this year. Transport Minister Rachel Maclean said, "This is a major step for the safe use of self-driving vehicles in the UK, making future journeys greener, easier and more reliable, while also helping the nation to build back better." Now, this follows a call for evidence, and the statement sets out how vehicles fitted with automated lane keeping system, ALKS technology, could legally be defined as self-driving as long as they receive GB type approval and that there is no evidence to challenge the vehicle's ability to self-drive. So ALKS enables a car, basically, or any other vehicle, to drive itself in a single lane whilst maintaining the ability to easily and safely return control to the driver when required. Now, it's the first example of self-driving technology that will be allowed in the UK. The driver basically can hand over control to the vehicle, which will then constantly monitor speed and keep a safe distance from other vehicles, whilst at the same time maintaining its position in the lane. Now, initially, at least, the proposal is that this automated lane keeping system will only be used on motorways at relatively low speeds, up to 37 miles per hour. At the moment, then, it will not be allowed at higher speeds or on other types of roads, which neatly in some ways leads me into today's second story. You'll recall that I reported a week and a half ago that there had been a fatal crash involving a Tesla, reported as a 2019 Model S, which killed 2 men. Now, the car apparently veered off the road on a twisty stretch, hit a tree and burst into flames. And after the fire was extinguished, accident investigators found 2 occupants in the vehicle, one in the front passenger seat and the other, who apparently was the owner, in the rear. And it has led to some speculation that the owner was demonstrating the vehicle's self-driving autopilot ability when the crash actually occurred. We have witness statements from people that said they left to test drive the vehicle without a driver to show the friend how it can drive itself. Mark Herman from Harris County Precinct number 4 was quoted as saying, "The police were 100% certain that there was no one in the driver's seat," Herman told a Houston radio station, according to a report in the Washington Post. Now, officials have not yet said whether or not Tesla's autopilot or the full self-driving system was in use at the time of the crash. The fire does appear to have destroyed the data, which apparently would have been stored on an SD card. Tesla initially refused to comment on the accident, but now they are claiming that there was a driver behind the wheel when the vehicle left the road. Lars Moravi, the company's vice president of vehicle engineering, has been quoted as saying, "Our adaptive cruise control only engages when a driver is buckled in at about 5 miles per hour, and it only accelerated to 30 miles per hour with the distance before the car crashed." Now, I'm not entirely certain what that was supposed to mean, whether that refers to an ideal statement or the actual crash itself. I don't know. But what they have also said is that they saw that the steering wheel was deformed, which presumably they suggest results from the impact of a body against the steering wheel, and all seatbelts post-crash were found to be unbuckled. Well, there's no evidence that anybody has kind of got out the driving seat and swapped seats. Anyway, Tesla CEO Elon Musk said last Monday that data logs recovered so far show autopilot was not enabled and this car did not purchase full self-driving. Moreover, standard autopilot would require lane lines to turn on, which this street did not have. And Mr. Musk went on to criticize what he described as extremely deceptive media practices and false reports. Now, however, the US Consumer Reports magazine ran a test, and they found that the Tesla Model Y could be tricked into driving along painted lines with nobody in the driver's seat on a closed test track. And what they found was that the self-driving capability remains engaged all the time that there is a hand on the steering wheel. There is apparently no sensor in the seat to detect a body actually in the seat. So basically what they did was they hung a small weight from the steering wheel to replicate the weight of a driver's hand, and then went and sat in the passenger seat and off the thing went. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board are investigating 28 Tesla crashes, 23 of which are believed to be tied to autopilot use. The independent newspaper here in the UK contacted Tesla about the story, but the company, which has apparently disbanded its press office, did not respond. So what's the thinking behind the push to get this kind of vehicle onto a UK road when one could argue that they're not fully proven to be human safe? Well, the government statement released last week argues for 3 positive benefits. These journeys of the future, they could ease congestion, they could cut emissions, and they could reduce human error. Self-driving technology in cars, buses and delivery vehicles could spark the beginning of the end of urban congestion, with traffic lights and vehicles speaking to each other to keep traffic flowing, reducing emissions and improving air quality in our towns and cities, whilst it could also improve access to transport for people with mobility issues and lead to more reliable public transport services, helping to level up access to transport in historically disconnected and rural areas. So let's have a look at that statement and let's look at it somewhat objectively. I mean, I admit my viewpoint is a subjective one-person viewpoint, but I do try to be objective when I analyse things like this. Is it the beginning of the end of urban congestion? Well, very unlikely, I would have said. In theory, what you can do with autonomous vehicle is you can entrain one with another. In other words, what you do is that you bunch them up close together, and the lead vehicle is talking to the vehicle behind it and controlling its speed. So basically what you can do is you can take away the normal braking distance that a human would need. And you can take that further, of course, by adding more and more and more vehicles to this train. But realistically, it's hard to see that as anything other than a very long-term goal when virtually all vehicles on the roads are autonomous, unless some drastic measures are taken to curtail the use of non-connected vehicles on particular stretches of roads. For example, it's not impossible to foresee that one lane of a motorway could be barriered off to stop ordinary driver-steered vehicles from entering it, and reserved entirely for autonomous vehicles. And then you could have a train of HGVs or something, all bunched up nice and tight, all trundling along with the lead vehicle at the front there, setting the pace for the train behind it. But I struggle to see how you could make that work in an urban area, unless whole zones of cities are actually going to be barriered off from non-autonomous vehicles, and that would presumably be a very politically unpopular move. Councils have come in for enough flack with their low traffic zones at the moment. And, people still have to move about, and it will take considerable time for this technology to, first of all, mature, but also to spread to the, as I say, the majority of cars on the road. There's going to be a time lag in anything like this. And once you get a mix and match situation where there are both kinds of vehicles, you need to remember that even an autonomous vehicle still needs to have space to stop if a human-driven vehicle ahead of it does something unexpected, like drive head-on into another vehicle and stop dead. So that requires space. So the idea that you will compress the traffic and reduce congestion in a sort of a mix and match situation seems to me to be rather unlikely. And Google's attempts to meld their self-driving vehicles into a mixed situation haven't met with 100% success either. There was one particularly high-profile collision which involved a Google car and a bus which collided, admittedly at walking pace, but basically the Google car needed to merge out of a lane which was closed ahead and into the adjacent lane. It tried to go sideways and it found that the bus driver wasn't letting it out, and the result was a collision. Obviously low speed, low damage, no significant, nothing, no injuries or anything, but inconvenience anyway. So end of congestion, I would say unlikely. And if you can't remove congestion from the roads, I would suggest that you're also overstating the potential health benefits. I struggle with the idea too that you would level up access to transport in historically disconnected and rural areas. If, as seems likely, these current systems require fixed infrastructure, it's blindingly obvious, basically, that the costs will be disproportionately high installing these in rural areas, as anybody who's tried to get a phone line installed in remoter parts of Scotland will know. So my guess, given that the roads budget currently can't stretch to fixing potholes, the likelihood is that this technology will be restricted to a few flagship roads, at least for the foreseeable future. The second big claim is for improved safety. Now, human error, according to the statement, contributes to over 85% of accidents, and I've no reason to disbelieve that. Mechanical failure is remarkably low in modern vehicles. And the statement claims that such systems could prevent 47,000 serious accidents and save 3,900 lives over the next decade through this ability to reduce human error. Now, of course, there is one hitch with that, which you might have seen. These are not fully autonomous vehicles. They are effectively human controlled, but with a sort of driver assist of staying in lane. So it always assumes that the human occupant is ready to take back control of the car as and when needed. And as the series of steering Tesla crashes illustrates, that's not always what happens. And the skeptic in me observes that the response to the Tesla crash that I've just mentioned is always to paint it as human error. So we're kind of in a sort of circular loop there. Anyway, not surprisingly, the UK announcement actually coincides with a consultation on the highway code, which aims to ensure, the statement says, that this first wave of autonomous technology is used safely and responsibly. So there is obviously the education issue. So why are we pushing ahead with these vehicles? Well, the big answer is probably economic. The UK is already considered a world leader in connected and self-driving vehicle innovation. British companies are working on and developing the next generations of automated vehicles. And as Transport Minister Rachel Maclean says, British companies are working to secure the UK's place as a global science superpower. Predictably, the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders, their chief executive Mike Hawes, is behind the move. He says the automotive industry welcomes this vital step to permit the use of automated vehicles on UK roads, which will put Britain in the vanguard of road safety and automotive technology. And he basically says that it will maintain our potential as a road leader, a world leader, and it will create essential jobs whilst ensuring our roads remain among the safest on the planet. He predicts 38,000 new jobs in the UK industry that could be worth £42 billion by 2035, and over 80% of these jobs are expected to be in professional, technical and skilled trade occupations. So there we go, there we have it. Got a couple of more people looked in. Nigel's come in, Tony's come in, Nick has also said good morning. Tony says that HGV trains won't work. Can you imagine trying to get on and off a motorway if there's a train of, say, 6 trucks in a row? Well, I think the answer to that, Tony, is that you'd have something like the French péage system, so that you would end train for a particular distance, and then the train would break up at a sort of a mid-road, a mid-route station, and those that needed to leave would leave, and those that needed to join would join, and then the entire train would be reassembled and trundle off towards the next station. So that's I don't think that's an insurmountable problem. I think there are technical solutions to that which are fairly straightforward. Right, okay, next story then. Of course, the human error is, does impact lives. It is a tragedy when somebody crashes and kills themselves or other people. And it appears that here in the UK, there is a parliamentary row brewing over the number of people killed on smart motorways. Now, I've covered this topic as well, because it is one of, considerable popular concern at the moment. And last year, a BBC programme called Panorama reported that the government had said there were 38 fatalities on these motorways between 2015 and 2019, with a number of these deaths resulting from stationary cars being hit from behind. You'll recall that the smart motorways have taken away the hard shoulder, the breakdown lane, as it were, and replaced it with a live running lane with refuges at intervals. And the problem is that people don't always break down where they can get into a refuge. Now, Grant Shapps, apparently, the Transport Secretary, later amended that figure to 39. But the opposition is claiming that the actual figure is significantly higher, and Shadow Transport Secretary Jim McMahon has told MPs that the stock take has shown that the actual number of people who have lost their lives on the all-lane running smart motorways over the same period was actually 63. And Labour based their analysis on Highways England statistics, which applied to roads classed as controlled motorways, dynamic hard running shoulder and all lane running. And basically speaking, in the House of Commons, Mr McMahon said that after much delay, the Transport Secretary has finally published Highways England review into smart motorways. The stock take has revealed that over the last 5 years, 63 people have lost their lives, a significant increase on the 38 figure given just over a year ago. He says victims, families and campaigners are crying out for common sense, crying out for action from the Secretary of State, recognising that the radar technology doesn't even capture broken down vehicles 35% of the time. As the legal challenges mount, will he publish the specific data which compares deaths on the hard shoulder on existing motorways to deaths on lanes previously on the hard shoulder and now used as a live running lane? And Mr. Shapps' reply was that he said, I know he and I and the whole House share similar concerns about the safety of our motorways. And one of the first things I did as a Secretary of State was introduce a stock take into smart motorways. One of the factors we have to look at is the level of fatalities on both smart motorways and regular motorways. As I previously mentioned to him, in the period 2015 to 2019, there were 39 fatalities on smart motorways, but also 368 fatalities on regular motorways. And he went on to say that the Office for Rail and Road has been asked to analyse the data and provide reassurance that the figures can be trusted. And then basically continued that they will continue to try to make our roads the safest in the world. So Right, the progress report from Highways England continues to describe smart motorways as the safest in the country and states that the number of fatalities per distance driven is 1/3 higher on conventional motorways than ALR motorways. They also announced that no further smart motorways will appear until radar technology is installed. Okay, so we have a sort of basically a fudging answer there from Grant Shapps, not really answering the question, was it? Anyway, hey ho, we carry on with that one, and we will. I wait to see with some interest how that one develops. Now, over in the world of motorcycling, what's been going on? Well, if you have a look at that particular bike, let me just zoom in on it a little. It's probably another motorcycle manufacturer that you've never heard of. This one is an Ox One from Ox Motorcycles, who are a Spanish-based company. Now, there are two versions of this motorcycle. The first is equivalent to a traditional moped, 50cc, with a 3 kilowatt motor and a design speed of 50 kilometers per hour, or 28 miles per hour if you prefer in English. The second has a bigger 8 kilowatt motor and can reach 110 kph, or around about 69 miles per hour. So that's roughly the equivalent of a 125. Both are claimed to have a range of around about 100 kilometers, thanks to two removable batteries, which weigh about 30 pounds each. So they might be removable, but they're a bit of a lump. But they can be charged from any standard household plug, and it only takes 2 hours to fully charge one of these 30 amp hour batteries. The Ox One was due to arrive on the Spanish market first, and then to expand into Europe. France and Italy were due to get them by the middle of this year. One reviewer rather cruelly called it the worst looking motorcycle ever made. Well, I can't get overexcited by the looks. I find that presumably fake plastic tape on the LED headlight particularly irritating, and the sort of 1950s tread pattern on that front tire. If I kind of zoom in on that a bit more, you can see it's got a sort of balloon front tire, and that tread pattern does scare me a little, I have to say. It reminds me far too much of the things I slithered around on back in the 1970s. But apart from that, it's a fairly standard looking bike, apart from the sort of large angular box that houses the battery and the electric motor. But anyway, Ox have now released a follow-up to that, which is called the Atypical Collection, and there are 3 models in this new bunch of custom bikes. Each one represents a different facet of motorcycling, apparently. The Monte Carlo represents the sports model, the Patagonia represents off-road riding options, and this one here is the Ox One Tokyo, which is an urban motorcycle, and that apparently means it has a contemporary vibe. So just make sure you feel the vibe there, and you get a rebellious look with it apparently too. It also apparently comes with a navigation technology built in. I'm not sure if this is on the original, but it's certainly on this trio of custom bikes. You can connect it predictably enough to your phone, and it helps the rider find out about battery status, and it improves their riding style, which I'm intrigued by that particular claim. And it even helps you find your bike if you've mislaid it. How much? Well, the Ox One Tokyo has a €5,990 price tag. Deliveries due to begin this autumn, so that's something there if you fancy a bit of Ox. Tony, what have you just said there? Tony has just said the trains would need to break up at every junction. Okay, well, again, the point I'm making, Tony, here is they wouldn't need to break up at every junction. You would join the train that's going to your destination. If you can't join the train that's going to your destination, you move into the other lanes and drive normally. So, given the think about the traffic coming out of Dover, for example, off the ferries or out of Cheriton and the Channel Tunnel. The vast majority of those lorries will not be breaking their journey anywhere between Dover and Folkestone and the M25. So it would be perfectly feasible for the majority of those lorries to go onto a train and take them as far as the M25, where you split up, and some go north around the M25, and some travel west. So, I honestly don't see this as a problem. I think there is a solution there. You just join a train which is going in your direction, and yes, you won't have one of these stations at every single junction, because that would make no sense whatsoever. But then most HGVs don't go on and off motorways for one exit. So I don't think it's an issue. And as Nick has just said, HGV trains could run in lane 3. Yeah, and I suspect that's probably what will happen. Right. Okay. Tony's also said that the hard shoulders, once they're turned into a running lane, causes problems for HGV access. I'm absolutely sure of that. I also happened to notice, as I was driving back from one of my training courses, somebody doing a bit of work on an overhead gantry just parked on the hard shoulder, and it just occurred to me that you couldn't do that basic maintenance. Apparently you can stay, as long as the work is not going to last more than 15 minutes, the service vehicle can just pull up on the hard shoulder, and the operative can do whatever it is they need to do. But if you take that hard shoulder away, something as simple as a bulb change, for example, in a light, would need a full lane closure. So I think there are a lot of disadvantages with these roads. Anyway, that's as by the by. Right, so what else? Well, I can never get very excited about tyres. It's one of these topics which seems to excite people on motorcycle forums, in discussion groups. There are always questions about which tyres should I fit to my bike. Well, my answer generally is pretty much any one that fits. Some years ago, I was lucky enough to sit in on a presentation by the chief motorcycle tyre design guy from Avon Tyres, and he was very forthright. He said that basically the only reason that they produce a big range of motorcycle tyres is because if they didn't, they would lose sales to the other motorcycle tyre manufacturers who do produce wide ranges. He said basically their sports touring tyre can do pretty much anything anybody wants to do on a road bike, anywhere, anytime. There are specialist tyres for something like track or off-road use, but for a road rider, you really don't need to worry too much. And the other thing he said was that all the tyres from all the manufacturers give pretty much the same performance. Now, I grew up in an era when Japanese tyres fitted to new bike were pretty awful, and they're frankly best consigned to a skip. And the real choice was between Avon Roadrunners and TT100s. A few people fitted Contis, police did, and every now and again you spotted a Michelin. But to be perfectly honest, since I got my knee down first time on a Mark III Roadrunner in the early 80s, I've really been struggling to see what new tyres deliver that the Roadrunner didn't, except for accelerated wear. The Mark III was a significant upgrade, admittedly, on the previous two versions of that tyre, but I used to get 20,000 miles out of them. And I can honestly say that they were the first modern tyre in terms of braking and cornering grip. They certainly would pull stoppies on a half-decent road surface, and they certainly gave you enough side grip, as I said, to get my knee down. But with every upgrade since, it doesn't seem to be dramatic changes to the performance of the tyre in terms of grip, but what has come down dramatically is the wear rate. I used to get 20,000 miles out of those tyres. I'm now lucky to get 8,000 out of a sport touring tyre. Maybe the modern tyres warm up a bit quicker on a very cold day, but quite frankly, I'm even if I'm looking at them with rose tinted glasses, I really do struggle a bit to see what the benefits are. Okay, but when I look at motorcycle tyres, then I don't often see something that attracts my attention. But funnily enough, this one did actually get my attention just a wee bit. It's the Dunlop Mutant, and as you can see, it's got a kind of wet weather look about it. They've just added it in the rear size that fits my XJ6, as it happens, a 160/60 ZR17. So that's really why I was looking at it. So what is it? Well, basically, it's claimed to be the world's first crossover tyre. That means, to quote the blurb that comes with the press release, it covers a wide range of bikes, from nakeds, roadsters, adventure bikes, tourers, and the crossover sectors. 140 bikes are now covered by their tyres. So basically, what is it? Well, it's apparently based on their original Sport Max Mutant Supermoto tyre, and it's claimed to provide exceptional wet grip, thanks to taking elements from wet racing, supermoto, and dirt track tyres. And it's claimed to offer safety in all riding conditions all year round as a hybrid road tyre. With the handling and stability you get from a super sport, best wet grip conditions this side of racing wets, and the durability of a touring fitment. So that's all very, very attractive. It gives you basically the best of all possible worlds. How's it achieved? Well, you have to have a buzz term. So this is DFF, Dynamic Front Formula. And state-of-the-art dual compounds at the rear, combining resins that combine performance and durability. So quite a feat if they can pull it off. And I'd actually quite like to try one, except for one small thing. They're right at the premium price end of the market at the moment. So typically 180 quid for a rear and around 280 for a pair deal, which is roughly twice what I pay for my Continentals at the moment. And even so, I'd still like to try and back to back with a set of road runners. Anyway, right, moving on to the better biking tip before I run out of time and energy today. I want to talk just today for a few minutes about one-way streets. Now, I've taken you around the old playmat a couple of times, and that's basically where we're back to today. We're looking at one-way streets. The most important thing to know about a one-way street is it's actually a one-way street. Now, I can recall an incident in one of my very first journeys up to London of failing to do just that and driving the wrong way down Drury Lane while I was looking for an address. Part of my college, actually. So obviously there's a risk of points and possibly a head-on collision, because people won't expect you to be going the wrong way down a one-way street. But there's a second effect. Even if we go down it the wrong way, the right way, we do need to know how to position ourselves and how other traffic will react as well. Now, on bike tests, one-way streets do trip candidates up. And I have heard riders come back with clutching their test fail certificate saying, it was a trick. The examiner didn't tell me it was a one-way street. Well, is he going to? Is there anybody who can stand there telling you it's a one-way street while you're driving the wrong way down it? Well, I was lucky when I was headed down Drury Lane the wrong way. A street cleaner actually shouted out and told me. But generally speaking, no, we don't have that help. So we do need to know what kind of a road we're on. Now, obviously, the basic rules keep left, but if it's a one-way street, the traffic situation allows you to ride on the right too. And where that's particularly important is when we come to the end of the street and to turn out of it. We can also pass slower cars on either side. So if the slower vehicle is on the left, you can pass on the right as normal, but you can also pass on the left if the slower car's to your right. So how do we spot a one-way street? Well, highway code time is the answer to that. Have a look at your highway code, and what you should notice, if I can get the right picture up, is one of these blue rectangular signs on either side of the street telling you that the road you are now driving into is a one-way street. So that's the first sign, the rectangular one pointing upwards. The trouble is that when you do spot these signs on the road, or rather I should say, you may not spot these signs on the road because they are often placed where they're difficult to see. They're just where you're turning into the road. So particularly for new riders, it's where they're trying to do maybe lifesaver checks, look for pedestrians, cars moving off or parking, cancel the signal, do their gear change and everything else. And of course, they can easily be concealed by another vehicle. So it's no great surprise if we don't actually spot these signs as we move into a road. So have a think about what other clues you might get. Cars parking all facing the same way is a reasonable clue, but it's not guaranteed evidence. There are certain streets which are just easier to access from one end than the other. And there was one street in Tunbridge Wells where we used to test, where I used to point out on virtually every single pass up that road that we did that there were cars parked facing the wrong way in the one-way street. For some reason, the locals, well, I don't know if it was locals or visitors, but for some reason, car drivers simply didn't notice that they were driving into a one-way street the wrong way on that particular one. There may not be a white line down the middle of the road. That's often given as a potential clue, but of course, it's not guaranteed. Just because it's there's no white line could mean it's just a single track road. And there are some two-way roads, which of course have been turned into one-way roads, and they still have a centre line down the middle. So we do need to look for some alternative clues, and here's one of them. This sign you'll see while you're approaching a one-way street from a side road. So if you're coming out of the side road, that'll be directly in front of you. But if you're in the one-way street, they're also visible. So every time you go past a side road or an entrance of some sort, just have a look to the other side and see if you can spot one of these signs. If you do, you'll now know you are in a one-way street. Now, eventually, of course, you'll get to the end of the one-way street, and if it's a good idea to know that it's a one-way street because, as I just said, we need to be on the right-hand side if we're turning right. That's a common error by new riders on bike test. They try to turn right from the left-hand side very carefully, and it's a potentially dangerous error, of course, because you could end up with another vehicle alongside you. So it's actually a serious fault and a fail on the riding test. But I've seen experienced riders make it because they fail to recognize the road they're in is a one-way street. So if you're lucky, you'll find one of these signs, usually either side of the road. Maybe facing you on the far side, but usually on the poles at the end of the road. But it's not guaranteed that you will actually find this. So you do need to look for a couple of other clues. And these would be double dash lines all the way across the end of the road. There are only two things that can be. It's either the end of a single track road, and if you don't know what that is, time to go and look it up in the highway code, or it's the end of a one-way street. So check the road markings and see what you've got. But there is a clincher, and that is the back view of two round signs facing away from you, one either side of the road. If they are round, and then the only thing that they can be are no entry signs. So two round grey signs facing away from you either side of the road must be no entry signs. There may be no entry painted on the road. It'll be upside down, of course, from your direction, but that's a clue too. But there are always that pair of no entry signs. Anything else to watch out for? Well, you can find that your two-way road has gone one way part way down. That can be easy to miss if you're not paying attention. And the one that used to catch a lot of people out on two test centres that I used to use was to find a one-way road turning into a two-way road. You have to spot the signs there. You will get a two-way traffic ahead sign. And you'll get those no entry signs as well as you pass the point at which it becomes two-way. For example, in, I think it was Catford, what test area, there was one street that was one way for almost all its length except the last 20 meters, when there was two-way access to a car showroom and their access behind the building. So 20 meters of the end of the road was two-way, and what of course used to happen was the trainees used to go down it, failed to notice it gone two-way, and tried to turn right from the wrong side of the centre line. So do pay attention to road signs and road markings. Watch out for those no entry signs, because they are the guaranteed clue once you see the back of those of what you're looking at. And don't forget, you also need to be able to tell the difference between a one-way street and a single track road. Single track roads are those not wide enough for two vehicles to pass side by side, and like a one-way street, there is no center line. And that double marking at the end of it is also an indicator you've got a single track lane. And you do find these in urban areas as well, not just out in the sticks. So do know what you're looking at, do know whether you're on a one-way street or a single track road, and that'll help you work out whether you're going to A, encounter other vehicles coming the other way, and B, which side of the road to turn on. Right, now don't forget, if that is doing your head in, why not think about some survival skills on-road training or my online coaching courses, which are also available and inexpensive. So that brings us to the end of today's show. Anything else to say? No, that's pretty much it. Nigel's just said, yes, going the wrong way street, one way down a one-way street is quite acceptable. You must do a lot of indignant head shaking, gesturing at other drivers. Yes, I've come across that one as well, I have to say. Yeah, where people are convinced they're going the right way. Yeah, I've probably made that. As I say, I've made that mistake going the wrong way down a one-way street, so I can forgive it. Don't forget survival skills, all sorts of low-cost and free better biking resources over on my Coffee page, which you are more than welcome to head over to read. The latest survival skills Saturday post went up yesterday. I'm still working on the 2018 post. They're going up steadily over there. The newsletter as well is also available if you just want to get the Facebook stuff delivered to your door, as it were. And there's a 60-second skills YouTube channel to look at on YouTube. I didn't put one up last week. I was a bit too busy on the Thursday, but that will be back with a new one next week. And finally, don't forget, the show goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11. And you can catch up with all the broadcasts over on Survival Skills UK on my YouTube channel there. All right, so with that, and no more to do, stay safe out there, and hopefully see you back for the next episode of Elevenses, and maybe out there on the road or on Zoom for a training session. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye for now from Kevin Williams.